Welcome to the Labyrinth. I'm your host Pratham Padav. If you find our podcast useful, please subscribe. My guest today is Pranav Radhakrishnan, who propagates rational thinking and scientific temper mainly through his YouTube channel, Science is Dope. So his main message is science is dope, pseudoscience is not. So Pranav, welcome to my dimension.
Thank you, and it's lovely to be here.
So Pranav, what do you do for a living, and apart from YouTube and stuff?
I don't want to say exactly where I work, but I work in EdTech. I don't want to say exactly because for privacy reasons, because I seem to have created a lot of enemies, and people take all opportunities they can to try and dox me in real life. So
understandable.
But I work in EdTech.
Especially when you're so honest and when you put out content in a country where anything can be turned into a controversy, right?
I try to be. I don't I might make mistakes every now and then, but I try to own up to it. So
but the main intention is just to be educational.
Yeah, exactly.
So when did you decide to put out content on your YouTube channel?
Good question. That must have been really long back. I think around 2015, I had this idea of doing YouTube. But I never actually got around to it because I don't know, it's really hard to start a channel. I have to say that, like, people just, like, the amount of work that it takes, people are just not willing to put that in. So the idea came to me in like 2015, but it took me a long time. Towards the end of 2016 is when I got really serious about it. And I uploaded my first video, I think in April 2017. I'm not sure now, but it took me that long to produce my first video. I remember, like, I wanted to go all out. Like, that first video, if you've seen it, I got a friend of mine, I paid him, in fact, to help me with some animations, and like I took a long time to perfectly write that script and everything, and yeah, I finally managed to upload it. And like I was worried if it was too long or something, so I cut it into 2 parts and stuff like that. But I'll just tell you more. So initially, my aim was to make a science channel because I'm really into science. So I wanted to make a pure science channel. I didn't intend to talk about pseudoscience or any of those topics, but that was also kind of close to my heart because at that time I used to follow a lot of other YouTubers and social media personalities who were talking against pseudoscience, and I was consuming a lot of that content. But the main content that I was consuming and that I wanted to make was science content, channels like Vsauce and Veritasium. And I wanted to do something like that in India. And I saw that no one was doing it. There is content that is educational, but it's more curriculum based and like test prep content and stuff. There are very few channels that I've seen that are like developing a love and passion for science, which is what I wanted to do. And the ones that are there, the ones that I mentioned, are very small, like barely any traction at all. And I was one such small, tiny channel. I still am now. I mean, you can argue how I am still, but so if you see a couple of my initial topics for videos, they're like more pure science topics, like how does sound work? Why do people tend to have different voices? and how is Elon Musk going to create a new species? That's an evolution topic. But I remember I used to put a lot of effort into those videos, and um, that effort wasn't really translating into traction, like viewership for my videos, and I just lost, you know, I just lost motivation, you could say, and I kind of stopped doing it for a while. And I noticed that during that period of not doing any videos, I noticed that the video that was getting traction was the one video I made on pseudoscience. I made a video called Ancient Indian Pseudoscience back then. And that video seemed to be getting some viewership. And I realized, okay, this is the kind of stuff that people want to watch. There is an audience for this. So I thought, yeah. And since it's close to my heart also, I thought, yeah, okay, why not do some topics along those lines? And that's how we're here.
Why do you think so many of us are so attracted to pseudoscience?
So I think some people, at least for, you know what, I would say for most people, it's the fact that they're a little desperate. There is a part of them that's rational enough to know that none of this can be true, or it probably doesn't work this way. But there is that part of them that's desperate, that wants these things to be true. For example, maybe someone suffering from a bad medical condition for which maybe there's no cure. So what if this pseudoscientific method, they probably not call it pseudoscientific, but what if this homeopathic remedy or this
Faith healer.
Yeah, faith healer can help me out, can cure me of my condition? Like, when they're desperate enough, they, even though rationally they know this might not be true, they want it to be true. And if that part gets strong enough, or if they get desperate enough, I think they'll just gravitate towards it. So
yeah,
that's one.
Yeah, it's interesting that you spoke about desperation, because one example that I can give you is this movie Trance, in which Fahad Fasil, in that he takes advantage of a man's desperation, who wants to just save his daughter, and she's having, I think, some kind of severe fever, and he just goes to this guy and gets some holy water or something and spills it on his daughter, expecting her to get better. And in the end, what happens? He ends up burying his daughter because it doesn't get better. That's the amount of desperation we have in this country, and it's aided by the lack of affordable healthcare also in this country.
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
but it's far, at the same time, it's far more affordable than some other countries. I know people who've come to India for medical reasons, because the treatment, if they got it in the US, would be extremely unaffordable. So they want to do it in India. So yeah, and I'll tell you, I had one more reason why people gravitate towards pseudoscience. I think they emotionally attach themselves to the beliefs they have, and the beliefs they're inculcated in them while they're growing up. Maybe it's tied in with whatever religion they follow, and maybe for whatever reasons, like they'll construct these beliefs in themselves, and the whole world that they see, they'll see everything in these tinted glasses, tinted by their beliefs, and they get like attacking that particular instance of pseudoscience is, to them, it's like attacking their religion or their beliefs. And then there are these figures who propagate, like, do you want me to mention them?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, people like Sadhguru, who propagate these beliefs to no end. Yeah, I think those are the main reasons, I guess, why.
What do you think a common man can do to differentiate this actual science from pseudoscience?
Good question. I think the first thing is scientific literacy. Like, I think in India, at least, science is seen right from the time when we are, being educated, right from the time when we're in schools. We don't really go to schools to learn. We go to schools, or at least some people go to schools to, pass and get marks and get a good job with those marks. And science is something that's very lucrative in this respect. So people just see science as a means to that end, as a means to get a good job. So they don't really see that science is something that's beautiful in itself. Like, it need not be something that can give you a job. It's just cumulative knowledge of all mankind. So I think this is lacking. And when people don't see science this way, they kind of don't give any importance to actually learning. And because of that, scientific literacy is really lacking in the country. And if people had scientific literacy, or if they had better scientific literacy, I think they'd be more reasonable in the kind of things that they tend to believe. So I think that's the first thing. People need to have better scientific literacy. And even then, I'd say some concepts like, how knowledge comes to be, how we learn things, how we distinguish what's true and what's not. There are many epistemological, philosophical ideas around this. I think they're far too complex for the common man. But I think a basic idea of why something needs to be so. Okay, so I always say, or at least I used to always say in my old videos, that there is an idea called falsifiability. Whenever you have an idea, whenever you make a statement, how do you know if it happens to be true, or if it's true, or if it's false? So the thing is, you can only show it's false if it can be shown to be false. For example, any idea that's mathematical can be shown to be false if your observation doesn't match the mathematical equation. But if an idea is not mathematical, it can only be shown to be false if you observe something that doesn't match with what you believe. So, for example, I'm an atheist, so I don't believe in God. And the reason is, if it's true that God exists, anything you observe will fall within that belief. So you can't really observe anything that shows you your idea is wrong. So I think many such, it's not just the idea of God, many such ideas exist. And if people are able to at least slightly distinguish between ideas that can be shown to be false, that can't be shown to be false, I think they'd have a better chance of deciding if something is worth believing or not. Yeah.
When you just started putting out videos, it took a lot of effort. You put some animation, and you also spoke something about content in one of your earlier videos about you have to say something if you believe in it, or something like that in your very early videos. And nowadays we see so many bad content being shoved right into our eyes. Okay, many pseudo-scientific content also, which some of which have millions of subscribers. Do you ever get irritated by this?
Do I ever get not irritated? Yeah, of course I get irritated. In fact, like when I saw, pseudoscience had gotten a foothold in YouTube India. There was far more pseudoscience content than anything against it. that's kind of one of the reasons that triggered me to make the kind of content that I do. So yeah, I do get irritated a lot.
Do you think I can ever get P-Dog on my podcast?
You'll have to ask him.
I'll have to.
You can like contact him on Instagram, I guess. But you'll have to ask him, I guess.
Okay. When the neighborhood auntie, okay, say something pseudoscientific, it's easy to dispute her and say, you know what, you're wrong. But when someone highly educated, like say a cardiologist from my hometown, says something like, say something like quantum healing works. Okay, how do you dispute that? Because I'm not from a scientific background. I don't have the authority to argue with someone like him. How do you go on debating with someone like that?
So I think people give too much value to this word authority. I think it's the way science works is no single person has any authority. Like no one has, like nothing becomes true because a certain person said it. Doesn't matter his qualifications, doesn't matter his accomplishments or achievements or whatever. It's only true or it's only supported if he can show evidence to back it up. And some of the ideas that you were talking about B.M. Hegde, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
So some of the ideas that he has said, they're just not backed up. Like I know he speaks. He has supported homeopathy before. He has talked about Ayurveda very positively. In fact, he says modern medicine is there is this thing called big pharma, which is trying to make money, as much money as possible. I'm not saying that there aren't corrupt individuals in modern medicine. Of course, anywhere, any kind of industry where money is being transacted, there is a scope for corruption. So those things are there. But we can't extrapolate from that the whole industry is corrupt, or there is a master plan by this big pharma to try and make as much money. There's no such thing, or at least he hasn't sufficiently backed it up. And how do you debate those people? I think it's very hard. You're not really, see, when you're doing a debate, when you're doing a public debate, at least, you're not only talking to that one person. You're actually, the words you're saying is actually influencing an audience, because there are a lot of people watching. And if those people blindly support your opposition because of their authority or anything, then I would say it's going to be very hard. See, like, me, I'm not extremely scientifically qualified or anything. I'm not a PhD researcher. I'm not I just really love science and I'm enthusiastic about it. And I want to make videos about it. I know a couple of things. I work in science, and that's what I'm doing here. But if people use that as an argument, against me, they're not doing it right. That's not really an argument. It becomes an argument from authority. But people need to look past everyone's qualification and see the kind of evidence they can use to support or back up whatever claim they're making.
Yeah, and you spoke about the public debate. Like when I try to contradict someone like B.M. Hegde, not only am I contradicting him, I'm also contradicting many of his followers. They were believing in let's say, homeopathy or quantum healing even before B.M. Hegde said it's true. But now when a highly qualified doctor, a Padma Vibhushan winner says it, It's great confirmation bias for them.
Yeah, it is.
Right.
It is.
What do you think is the power of confirmation bias and echo chambers?
I'll have to go into rant mode right now. But confirmation bias, like, people don't know that confirmation bias is a thing. I think it should really be a part of our education. Like, we should learn about confirmation bias. I think schools should teach that, okay, if you already have an idea in your mind, that's gonna color your perception of everything you see or hear or observe. That's gonna bias you towards thinking in one particular manner about what you're seeing. For example, if you believe that I'm going to take an extreme belief. If you believe that cow urine can cure cancer, or at least has some medical effects, then yeah, if some study comes out saying what you already believe, like medical benefits of cow urine or whatever, you're going to use that as look at this. I found evidence that what I believe is actually true. So that's what confirmation bias is. And you mentioned one more thing, I think.
Echo chambers. People usually surround themselves only with those who already agree with them.
Agree. Yeah. True. People like they don't want the ideas that they have to be contradicted, I guess. Like, so when you try to change a person's belief about something, it's like, see, the beliefs are, or at least core beliefs, are like foundations upon which every other belief, everything that the person has seen all their life is built upon. So if you're destroying that foundation, it's like everything that they've seen or they understand is now crumbling down. So obviously they're going to resist any change of their core beliefs. So in order to make it easier for them, they'll subconsciously surround themselves with people that that will say things that won't resist what they believe. So yeah, that's the reason for echo chambers, and it's a bit of a tendency that we have as humans. Like, I know I tend to surround myself with people who are rational. Maybe I should surround myself with people who believe the opposite of what I do. And if they can convince me, if they can show me evidence of why I should probably change my belief, I'll try my best to change them. The only thing is, no one has ever shown me any evidence of, or at least what I strongly believe, no one has shown me evidence against it. And if they do, I'll gladly change them. I want them to. In fact, I think that's the mark of rationality. Like, believe only based on evidence, and don't attach yourself to what you believe. Be prepared to change your beliefs if you find convincing evidence. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
yeah, I mean, it answered my question beautifully. And do you have any favorite conspiracy theories?
Favorite conspiracy theories. Let me see. I like maybe the moon landing one, maybe the flat earth, but like these are very easy to debunk. I don't know, 5G.
Oh, yeah, 5G one.
Sure.
Sure.
I just made a tweet about that just now. Yeah.
Okay, you just made a content about 5G, is it?
I made a tweet.
Tweet. Okay. What is this conspiracy theory behind 5G?
So there are lots of studies. Okay, first thing is that 5G happens to be, or at least the highest band of 5G, the highest speed used by 5G, that falls within the electromagnetic spectrum that's in the infrared region. It's between infrared and microwave. I don't know how much I have to explain because I think these are complex terms if you don't know them already, if the audience doesn't know them already. But there is an electromagnetic spectrum of which the visible light, the light that we can see, is a part. And there is a lower frequency part of that that we use for wireless communication, including mobile communication. And 5G is just part of that. Now, frequency is what determines energy. If visible light, which no one has any problem with, which if you agree that is completely harmless, then 5G is even lesser frequency and therefore even lesser energy than visible light. So it can't cause the kind of carcinogenous mutations that some of these people claim it does. Now, there is one other thing. There are thermal effects to radiation that happens because these electromagnetic waves they cause electrons to jump up and down between energy levels. That kind of vibration is what gets things to heat up. And so microwaves, that's a principle they use to heat up food. And people see this and they think 5G is electromagnetic radiation that's very similar. So why can't it produce the same kind of thermal effect in our bodies? And the answer to that is, we're not complete 100% sure it doesn't, but a lot of studies have been done and they've concluded that it's completely safe. If in the future some study does show us some evidence that there is some possible harm, then we'll definitely update our regulations based on that. So far, there is no such thing. But a lot of people, like, what they do is they cite a lot of very poor quality studies that do conclude some carcinogenous effect of radiation and stuff like that. But these are very poor quality because they use small sample size, or the conclusion they've drawn is not proper. They're not accounting for biases. Some studies are not peer reviewed. That's a thing.
This year has been a year of conspiracy theories. I think the past 1 year, thanks to the pandemic. Do you have any favorite conspiracy theories regarding the pandemic and vaccines?
I think there was a WhatsApp forward. In fact, I made a video about it too. There was a WhatsApp forward. There was this Japanese virologist, I believe, who said something about the virus, that it was made in a laboratory and stuff like that. There was a WhatsApp forward about this, which I used as an example for how to fact check. I have a video on that. But yeah, that's one of my favorites, I guess. And this laboratory hypothesis, I think some new evidence has come out in support of that. I don't know what is what is the final verdict on that or anything, but at that point when this first came out, we had no such overwhelming evidence or anything like that. People were just saying this and they were just forwarding it on WhatsApp without even fact checking it. So yeah.
But now conspiracy theorists will claim this as a victory, because now they're seeing some reports saying that it is plausible.
Yeah.
And yeah. So earlier you were using words
confirmation
like
bias.
Confirmation. Exactly, confirmation bias. They take these small reports and which support their exaggerated opinions. Earlier we were using words like frequency and vibration. You know who else uses those words? Pseudoscientists. Okay, Nityananda, Sadhguru, Deepak Chopra, and when
I don't know if you've seen it, but I've made a video exactly on this topic. The words that these pseudoscientists tend to use. and vibration frequency are some of the most popular ones. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you try to debunk these words like dimension, vibration, frequency? Because most of us get confused. We're like, what are these words?
So I think the words themselves do carry meaning. In fact, they're words used in very scientific contexts in physics. Like there is a very specific meaning to what vibration means, to what energy means, to what dimension means. But when it comes in the context of pseudoscience, they're not very specific like that. They're very vague. Like the word vibration, it just means a specific quality of something. So, like the vibrations that you're putting out, you will attract the same kind of things with those vibrations. So I think when you shouldn't debunk the words exactly, but you should debunk the context in which they tend to be used. And what I do sometimes, what I do usually is like I just point out that they're very specific. Like you can use this in literally any context and not go wrong. How much are you gonna value something like that? An idea like that.
It's done in a very subtle way also. Like someone may go on a travel and they may put a travel picture and say good vibes only. It's I mean their vibes is not the scientific vibration. They're just using it as a metaphor. And these godmen and folks like Deepak Chopra, they remove the line between what is metaphorical and what is scientific.
Exactly. That's what they do. And I don't think there's anything wrong with using the words vibes. A word like vibes, I think it's fine. But when you try to explain things with that as a basis, making it sound very scientific, I think that's when it becomes problematic. And yeah.
Another reason why Sadhguru or Deepak Chopra has so many followers is because their content is very motivating and inspirational. When we speak in scientific terms, people usually get bored. They don't find it inspiring or motivating. How do we, even if we debunk them, people will still say, you know what, I don't care. The reason why I watch Deepak Chopra videos is not to be right, but to be happy. Right.
So it's a good question. I think science has a tendency. So there's a video by Tyler Dewitt. It's a TEDx talk where he talks about this problem with science. Okay, there is a tendency to be accurate at the expense of understandability. So in their effort to be accurate, they use all these technical terms and they try to be as correct as possible because other scientifically qualified individuals will listen to what they're saying and they'll critique what they're saying. So someone from that scientific background always has this fear, and so they'll add all these caveats and all this technicality to what they're saying in an effort not to be wrong. And I think that adds to that kills the understandability of what they're saying. And when something is less and less understandable to an average layman, when they're listening to it, they just get bored. They just they need to have all these prerequisite knowledge to understand what they're saying. But take someone like Deepak Chopra. They'll use a few scientific sounding words, but everything else they're saying is very simple and easy to understand and digest. So, I would say Deepak Chopra is definitely easier to digest. And what I want to do at least is also something along the same lines. I want to make science more interesting. Take all this jargon and technicality out of science and make it more understandable. So I think science kind of lacks that, and there should be more of that.
Yeah. Even then, with objectivity, with just objective thinking, it becomes difficult to explain words like creativity or consciousness. How can we, explain a person's creativity or consciousness through simply objective and scientific terms?
I'm not sure we can, or at least I don't have the answer. I don't know the answer, but I think these are things. These are subjective ideas, right? You can only judge a person's creativity by like looking at what they create and how much it appeals to you emotionally. So these are very subjective ideas, I would say. There are no objective measures for it. Even consciousness, it's not something we understand today. We don't know exactly how consciousness comes to be, or why is anyone or anything conscious, or is there consciousness in something inanimate? Like, we don't have clear answers to all those questions. I think we might sometime in the future if we find some objective ways of measuring it, but right now I don't think we have objective answers to those questions.
Yeah, and when their followers, when let's say Deepak Chopra, Sadhguru's followers, when they ask like, then explain creativity, then explain consciousness, I just say, I don't know. I don't know is actually a very underrated answer. People don't accept the fact that I don't know. Instead, they try to overcompensate for that with these weird pseudoscientific ideas, which then generate millions of dollars.
That I think I can't remember that quote. There is a perfect quote for what you just said. I don't remember it. I would rather not know than give myself the illusion of knowing, or live in a comforting fantasy. There's something like that. There's a quote like that.
It's okay. I'll find it out later and I'll put it in the video's description.
Yeah. Look at the description.
Yes. And also, if tomorrow, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a morally perfect person. Okay. Let's say I'm a very selfish person and I want to become a god man tomorrow. I want to make a lot of money. Okay. And I decide to consult you. Okay. Because since you debunk a lot of godmen, I want to be undebunkable. I don't know if that's even a word, but I don't want to get debunked. And I want to make a lot of money. What kind of tips would you give me?
So I have a video called "How to Be a God Man." First I'd like direct you to that video. Basically, I would say, so you need to have this mysterious origin story or something. You need to have someone speak for you, because I've seen a lot of godmen in Kerala. That's a real problem in Kerala, despite the fact that there is this notion about Kerala being very rational, scientific, educated and stuff. There are like a lot of godmen in Kerala. And I've noticed that they don't do their own speaking. They don't talk for themselves. They have people for that. And if I say that I have all these magical powers, you're probably not going to believe me. You're going to think that I'm lying. But if someone else says that I have these magical powers, then you're more likely to believe that person. So I would say have a spokesperson for yourself. And in today's world, it's a little harder. But back when there was no internet and there was no information sharing and stuff, it was a lot easier. If someone actually said something like this, you wouldn't be able to verify so easily. But today, I would say, it's not going to be an overnight thing. People like Sadhguru, I'm sure he built it over years. I know he's been active right since like the mid 2000s, before 2010. But he only became extremely prominent in the last couple of years, like with social media and with YouTube and everything. So I would say definitely have a past and try to have have a mysterious past as well. Keep a spokesperson. Be active on social media. Learn how to create spiritual jargon. And yeah, if it doesn't work, then somehow erase all traces of what you've done and start again, try again. But that's easier said than done today with the internet and everything. But yeah, this is what I'd say.
Do you have a favorite god man right now?
Yeah. I like Sadhguru. I like him. He has a lot of charisma. Like I kind of wish I had that level of charisma, but I don't. So he has this commanding presence. Like whatever he says, he can get people to, stand behind him. So yeah, I like Sadhguru a lot.
And the thing about Sadhguru is some of the things that he says make sense. In fact, in the past few years, I have actually liked some of his videos, like literally click the like button. I thought, oh, wow, this makes sense. And that's another argument that some of his followers say. See, even you agree with some of the things that he says, to which I say, look, I agree with the Hitler that smoking is injurious to health because he ran an anti-smoking campaign. That doesn't mean that I have to, be a worshipper of Hitler. Same way, I don't have to be a worshipper of Sadhguru. They have to be consistent. Their overall messaging has to be good. They need not be perfect. And that's what I tell people. And sometimes, they get very angry with me. Do you ever get people, getting offended and telling bad things about you because you try to be as honest as possible?
Just have a look at my comment section, my Sadhguru video. But one argument I get very often is that Sadhguru does a lot of philanthropy. He does all these good things for society. He has a school. He does all these things for the environment, and there are some arguments against those specifically. But in general, I want to say that there's this idea, okay, and I think it's part of our culture where we have this belief that there are good things that you can do and there are bad things that you can do, and they're weighed on the same scale. So if you do bad acts, if you do more good acts, they kind of balance out and you're a good person. That's not true. If you're a good person, you do good acts. If you're a bad person, you do bad acts. And if you do both, they don't cancel out.
Exactly. So, I think the good example for this is how our legal system works. I can save 10, let's say I'm a lifeguard and I may save 10 lives. That doesn't mean that I can murder one guy and say I still saved 9+ lives. I can't say don't put me in jail.
Yeah. Same thing. So I think it's see, if you do good, that's great. But if you do good through means that you obtained using dishonest practices, then yeah, I'm going to question whether you're good at all. So yeah.
In general, what do you think a person can do to be more scientific?
Good question. So I'm saying good question a lot. Every time you ask a question, I'm saying good question. So I think to be more scientific, you have to always be open to the fact that you might be wrong. And be willing to change your beliefs if you're convinced, if someone shows you evidence that's convincing. But but at the same time, you should stand behind what you do believe. And if someone fails to convince you otherwise, then I think you have to defend what you believe. Otherwise, if someone can convince you, then your opinions are probably not worth defending in the first place. But I think to be scientific, you have to be open to the fact that you might be wrong. You have to listen to people, but that doesn't mean you have to be so open that your brains actually fall out. Like people will argue that, oh, you're not open enough, that's why you're not listening to Sadhguru. I mean, listen to the things he says. I was open enough to listen to him. I'm convinced of what he's saying. So, like, what's your argument? Should I just keep listening until I change my beliefs? Like, no, I'm not convinced. So, I think that's basically the main thing. And you should use the scientific method. And I think that idea is a little complicated because the scientific method itself is you won't get the idea behind the scientific method the first time you hear it. But if you apply the scientific method to how you learn things, I think that kind of makes you scientific.
What is the scientific method?
So, okay. You see something happening in the world, and you have a question. Okay, why is that happening? For example, maybe if I drop something, it's gonna fall, and you will ask, okay, why is that falling? And then you can guess the reason. Maybe all heavy things fall. Maybe the heavier something is, the more it's gonna fall. Or maybe the earth is pulling everything towards it. Or maybe the natural, maybe the elements that a body is constituted of is what determines if it's gonna fall or if it's gonna rise. So these are all ideas. So you have an observation, then you guess an idea, and that's called hypothesizing. You hypothesize why it might be that way. And then if you have a hypothesis, you don't know if it's true or false. So how do you figure out if it's true or false? You go out into the world. If your hypothesis were true, then you're gonna observe something in the real world. For example, you will see so if you believe that the earth pulls everything towards it, no matter what it is or where it is, it's gonna get pulled toward the earth. So by that hypothesis, okay, the moon is gonna get pulled toward the earth. So can you explain why it's not falling? And there are all these questions, okay? When you find all these observations match with what you're hypothesizing, then your hypothesis is probably correct. I'm saying probably because you might find something in the future that doesn't match up with your hypothesis. Like, for example, Newton said that things fall toward the earth. And there are observations like the orbit of Mercury around the sun, which doesn't match up with Newton's laws. So basically, you start with an observation, you create a hypothesis, you test your hypothesis by going out into the real world, by making more observations. So now you come back to the first step. So based on these new observations, you update your hypothesis. If you have enough observations, you start calling it a theory, and you keep repeating this. And whatever conclusions you've drawn, you try to communicate, or you tell people, okay, this is what I've learned. And yeah, these are basic elements of the scientific method. Once again, long ranting answer, but yeah.
No, long answers are necessary. If basic answers are given by people like His Holiness Sadhguru, which are not right usually. So lastly, what is the future of Science's Dope look like?
I don't know. I really don't know, because I only do it during my free time. So whenever I think of a topic that I find interesting, that I think people would want to watch, I'll make a video on that. But if the channel grows, if I'm able to make enough interesting videos and people want to watch them, if the channel grows, I don't know. Maybe I might try to monetize it. Maybe I might focus more on the channel. Maybe I might start doing more videos. I haven't really thought, I guess. But yeah, that so the idea is just keep making videos until I reach a point where I can dedicate more time to the channel, I guess. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Pranav. This was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate you taking the time out. This is the first interview that I've been a part of, I guess. But I really enjoyed this conversation also. And yeah,
Yeah.
all the best to you.
Thank you, man.